Hi, I'm Dale and I'm an energy efficiency expert. I'm at the Melbourne home of an Origin customer to help boost their energy efficiency. So let's take a look through this townhouse now and I'll show you some simple, affordable, renter-friendly tips. In a rental home, we're looking for temporary reversible solutions, and there are plenty available. Let me show you how some of these products work. So windows are really important in a house, but they're the thermal weak point. And when we look at the envelope, the windows are seen as holes in the envelope. But as a renter, what we can do is there are a number of cheap things and cheap products we can apply to these windows that really boost their performance. So what I have here is a sheet of polycarbonate, and this is a really cheap product that improves the performance of the window. And you can see here that the polycarbonate is double layered. And what that will do is it will trap a layer there inside the polycarbonate, and trapped air is a really good insulator. So what I'm going to do is I'll fit this against the window, and then we can get the thermal imaging camera out and you'll clearly see a temperature difference between the glass and the polycarbonate sheeting. So I've got my thermal imaging camera out to really show the temperature difference between the window with the polycarbonate sheet over and the glass. So that temperature of the polycarbonate sheeting is over 16 degrees. If I pan across to the glass, it drops down to 14 degrees. So we've clearly got a large temperature difference, and you can see that in the thermal imaging camera how much that product has warmed the temperature of the window. So another cheap improvement for windows is a product called window insulating kits, and I have an example of one here. And what it comprises is rolls of heavy duty clear plastic and double-sided tape. And what we do is we put double-sided tape around the perimeter of the architrave, install the clear plastic, trim it, blow it tight with a hairdryer. And what that will do, that will trap a layer of air between the plastic and the window, and that is a cheap way of double glazing your windows for winter months. And the third product we can use to improve the window's performance is bubble wrap. And bubble wrap again works like the other products where it's trapping a layer of air, and this will improve your performance. So what you need is to spray some water onto the window, and that bubble wrap will just stick there and hold. So just for a couple of dollars investment, we can get a 2-degree improvement on the window temperature. Now some of you may have windows that face east or west. Now these windows can really heat a house up in summer, and a cheap option is a product like this, which is a perforated window shade, and this product's installed internally and it's reusable. So what I'd recommend is using Velcro tabs, applying this to the east and west facing windows in summer, and what this will do is it'll keep the rooms much cooler. It'll prevent that or slow down that heat gain from direct sunlight coming through those windows. So one thing homeowners can do is ensure that their house is zoned and they're not heating the whole house, rather they're heating the spaces that they're actually in. Now this house we're in has zoned heating and cooling, and at the moment we've got the living room zoned, and we don't need to be heating these bedrooms. For simpler houses, if you had something like an open doorway, then what you can do is, for winter, is just quite simply installing a temporary curtain, or I've even seen houses where they put a blanket up to stop that heat going into those areas that don't need to be heated. So the house we're in today is quite warm. The temperature is 24 degrees, and that uses quite a lot of energy. Every degree you increase the temperature adds 10% to your energy heating costs. So what we're going to do is this central heating system, we're going to drop it down to around 20 degrees, and that will still be very comfortable for the occupants, but it will also use considerably less energy. So the window architrave can be a real draft point in the house, and that can lead to cold temperatures in rooms. This particular architrave here, or all architraves, what they're doing is they're covering a really large gap between the window frame or the window and the plasterboard. So it is really important to go around and check all your architraves to make sure there are no gaps between the plasterboard and the architrave. Now, if you do see gaps, there are two really good products that you can use. The first one is a cork, and what we would do for small gaps is we would cork around the perimeter of the architrave, and that will stop air leakage. And then the second product we can use is a product called Gap Rod Filler, and this comes in various thicknesses. So this one here is 6 millimeters, and that can really fill up large gaps between the plasterboard and architrave, particularly when we get up the top there can be really big gaps. So sealing the window and door architraves is a really simple task that doesn't cost very much. Another major draft point in a house is between the skirting board and the floorboards. Now, in this particular house, or with all houses, the skirting board is hiding a large gap. So it is very important, and you can see here that there is a visible gap between the floor and the skirting board. We find in very old heritage houses or houses with wooden floorboards, timber floorboards, that there can be really large gaps here. So these again can be easily sealed with the cork, and that would be running that cork in under that gap there. Or if the gap is quite large, we would need to go to a product called Gap Filler Rod. And you can see here that that gap filler rod easily pushes into that gap underneath the skirting board. So external doors can be real draft points, and if you can see visible light around the perimeter of the door or underneath the door, then you're going to have a drafty door. Now, a cheap product is a tape seal or a V-seal, and this is really good as a door proofer, and it's very good for warp doors because the seal can vary from quite wide down to quite narrow. And all you do is simply peel that tape off, apply it to the door, and that will give you a real draft or a real good seal around the perimeter of the door. So we can see with this front door, there's a clear gap that needs draft proofing. Now, a really cheap seal is something like this, where it's easy to install, it peels off. So all we need to do is clean that surface. We need to trim the door seal for the right size, and then that will stop that draft coming underneath the door. Now, there might be some rooms in your house that don't need to be heated. An example might be a laundry or a spare bedroom. What we can do is we can draft proof these internal doors so that we don't lose heat into those spaces that don't need to be heated. This will keep the other rooms warmer in the house. So again, very cheaply, we use our tape seal or our V-seal around the perimeter of the door. And then we might use a bottom door seal like a brush seal, because as we can see here that there's quite a large gap underneath the door. So that brush seal will reduce the heat loss going in under the door. Now, if you have ceiling fans, I'd recommend you use ceiling fans in winter. Ceiling fans, especially if you have a house with high ceilings, what's happening is the air's rising and all the air will be in the up at the ceiling level. And what we find is there can be a 10-degree temperature difference between the ceiling and the floor. Having a ceiling fan on a winter setting and spinning that ceiling fan very slowly, that will bring the warm air back down to occupant level, and it'll actually make the house or the room more comfortable, and you'll use less energy as well. So we're in the bathroom now, and this bathroom, as all bathrooms, has a ceiling exhaust fan. And these are large holes in your ceiling that allow a lot of warm air to be lost in the house. What you can do for a very cheap option is install a product called a draft stopper, and you can see that this goes over the ceiling exhaust fan and it has flaps that lift up. So as you turn the exhaust fan off, those flaps lift up, and then the flaps will drop down once the exhaust fan goes off. Now these are around $30, and if you live in Victoria, you can get these free from the state government VEU program. So if you have air conditioning or gas ducted heating, then you'll have a filter in front of your return air intake. And this filter, it's critical to clean this filter maybe 4 times a year at the start of each season. So removing and cleaning the filter is fairly straightforward. So I'm going to bring this down and slide out that filter. And you can see here this filter is totally clogged, and this is going to really reduce the performance of the air conditioning system. I would take it outside, you could give it a hose, you could take it to the laundry, give it a brush, or get your vacuum cleaner out. But this is something that every householder needs to do if they have central heating, or whether they have individual systems that they need to keep their filters clean. So here's the manhole cover, and the manhole cover forms part of the ceiling. So it's important that you also insulate the manhole cover, otherwise we're getting large discrepancies between the insulation and the manhole. So a good product to use on top of the manhole cover is a product called foil board, which is a piece of polystyrene foam, and that can simply be glued to the back side of the manhole cover. So state governments now have really good incentives to transition gas hot water systems to electric or heat pump. And a heat pump is significantly cheaper. It's around $250 a year to heat your hot water. However, if you have a solar PV system, then you can heat your heat pump hot water system during the day, and the solar PV system will really reduce or offset that associated electricity consumption. So many houses want to go all electric, and normally the last appliance to replace is a gas cooktop. Now in some states they have incentives to replace that cooktop with induction, and that will allow you to transition to an all-electric home. An air fryer can use up to 50% less electricity than an electric oven. Now over the past few years I've assessed hundreds of houses, and nearly all of those have been owner-occupiers. I can count on one hand the number of times that I've been asked to do an energy audit on a rental property. It's always great if you could talk to your landlord to see what improvements they would be prepared to make. I hope these tips have been useful today. Remember to check for rebates and incentives in your state. These efficiency hacks will make a huge difference to this family's energy bills and comfort.